here I am, and I am introducing today the Honorable Consul for Austria, Dr. Gerald Seidl, and he is responsible for our area here to represent the interests of Austria. And before I hand it over to him, I would like to mention, you may know and hear from my accent, I was born originally in Germany. And in Germany, we looked at Austria kind of the country to go on vacation, skiing, or whatever, good food and wine. However, I happened to work for an Austrian company, and I learned how different Austria is. The company I worked for, a specialty steel company, was the largest in the world, exporting 85% worldwide. And we literally had to look at it globally. And this is very often the outlook of Austrians, not to be in a small country in Europe, but look globally into the marketplaces. I was responsible for the United States. And there you look at the different regions of commerce. Austria, and I don't go into any details of Austria because we have these specialists here, but Austria is a member of the European Union. And sometimes that term is a little vague in the United States too. Just to summarize quickly, the European Union is in population a little bigger than the United States. It has, before England separated out, over 500 million people. Now it has 440 million people versus United States 330 million. The gross national product is a little less than the United States, but nevertheless, it is still the same as China, which is in the news all the time. And the big difference is in Europe, you have these 440 million people in half the space as the United States has. When you look at China, China has the same space as the United States. However, it has a little more than 1 billion more people. And that is the biggest difference between all these countries. We supplied also to Russia quite a bit, and we are in the news in America always with Russia, and they are a very powerful military force. Economically, they are insignificant, which surprises many Americans. If you just pick 2 countries out of the European Union, the largest is Germany, add to it Austria, both German speaking, when you put their GNP together, they are 3 times stronger than Russia. These 2 countries alone, 3 times stronger than Russia. So when you look who are the best allies for the United States, Austria is a small, bright star in Europe. And if you need an ally, I take an Austrian and an American every time before I take a Russian. So I hand it over to Dr. Gerald Seidl, Honorary Consul of Austria. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I hope you see. Okay, this is for you. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very informal. I mean, if you have questions, I guess raise the hand. And my simple question, first of all, anyone raise the hand who was in Austria? So I get some idea who was there. Okay, some of you. I guess most of you have been in Europe at least. I think so. So Well, when Bernd asked me, so we walked through a little bit some topics. So in a not total conclusive order, let me show up some basically facts, slides, or just some talking points, and I will talk over. Position of Austria, you see it here, it's in the heart of Europe, it's in the center. That we're a little more now, we just passed 9 million, so this is a little older table. And we are obviously landlocked. Interesting, maybe, you see we have in miles, 1,680 miles of border, but you see all these countries we are bordering. So I'm born in Vienna, and basically I was 35 minutes north of me was or is Czechia. Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia, is less than 40 miles away. And for Houston, it's very simple. I measured it. It's exactly from downtown to Sugar Land. So you can go to Bratislava for have lunch and be back. Similar like you would go to Sugar Land for lunch. Hungary is, again, 45 minutes by highway. You're in Hungary, 2 hours, you're in Budapest. So we're really very close. And the same is in 7 hours from Vienna, you're in Italy. If you're more in the southern part of Austria, super easy, have lunch or dinner in Italy and come back. So I think that's one of the huge differences anyway, applying to many parts of Europe over how we live here in America with everything far and you travel all day and you're basically in the same state. The history, don't want to go much into it, but 996 was the first time Austria's Österreich was mentioned. And since then, with the Habsburgs family, which many of you are familiar, maybe one of the most powerful families, until the end of World War I, it developed as one of the big powers in the world. Vienna, 1900, was one of the 3 largest cities in the world. You know? At that time, actually, Vienna had more people living there than now. It was over 2 million, 2.1 million people. Today, Vienna grew again a lot, and is now 1.9 million people, with maybe 2 million if you take the surroundings. 45, the war ended. For 10 years, Austria was occupied by the 4 powers, the eastern part, especially by Russia. And somehow I have to say the Austrian politicians did it right, and we were basically the only country where Russia was, who left. And so 1955, we got our independence, and Austria declared itself actually as neutral. It means we did not join NATO. We tried to be neutral. Obviously, we're very much aligned with the Western world. We are in many of the Western organizations, similar like Sweden, you know, maybe Switzerland. They're all considered neutral. And even military-wise, when I was in the army, which is compulsory in Austria, the whole army system is aligned with NATO, and you have people going to NATO meetings, and so that's it. After all, I mean, it's called neutral, but in real life, we're extremely, with only Western-oriented, no question. The size, what Bernd mentioned, in Austria, Europe is smaller, Austria is even smaller. You see here on the map, the little part of Austria. In history, in geography, remember in school, Austria is about the Lake Michigan. It's always good to remember that's the size, and in this sort of pear shape. Sort of a little interesting tidbits about Austria and the US. Obviously, there were a lot of immigrants from Austria to the US, and that's quite funny often, because till 1918 there was a monarchy, so people were part of a monarchy, and they said, well, I'm Austrian, but actually they may have been Slovaks today, partly what's the Ukraine, Poles, lots of different people. So if my grandmother was born in Bohemia, which is today Czechia, which is, and she was born in Budweis, but it was part of the Austrian monarchy. So when I asked her, what did you feel? It was really hard even for her to explain what was her nationality, somehow more maybe German, not Austria. after the war was not so identified. So there were a lot of immigrants, and there's this old tidbit long ago when the Congress here voted or was discussing what is the unified language in prime language in America. The German language missed out with a very small percentage over English. And you see here a lot of the immigrants, interestingly, were of the Jews spoke Yiddish, which is more a dying language, but Yiddish and Viennese, the Viennese dialect has a lot in common. So a lot of them were, if I say, bist du Mischuge? Are you crazy? So then, funny enough, people in Vienna often don't think about it, how many Yiddish words are into it integrated. Texas, obviously, there were a lot of, as we all know, Texas had a lot of, especially German immigrants, at the same time also from Austria. And there are, so I had got these tidbits from different sources. So in total, at the moment, 2000, at the census, 735,000 Americans said they have some sort, so either both parents or one parent are descendants of Austria. And at the same time, 22,000 Texans declared one or two parents at least are from Austria, and about 2,000 are in the Houston area, 1,600 in the Dallas area. Interesting when I see here with the consulate, when I deal with Austrians, real Austrians in terms of citizenship, it's quite often interesting that many of them must say don't speak German. They have an Austrian passport, like in many European countries, even if your great-parents emigrated and they're Austrians, they can pass on the citizenship to the kids. So it's often interesting to see people here, they haven't been there, but they have Austrian citizenship and want to keep it. Obviously, partly over the last years with political discussion here, they were very keen to have this sort of way out, maybe in the worst case. In the Houston area, you have a number of Austrian passport Austrians and as a real Austrian citizens. Obviously, there are some architects, some work for the universities. In the restaurant business, one of the areas where Austrians are really internationally active, restaurant hotels. You see them here. And then we have, like in Leoben, in one smaller city in Vienna, we have a very good petroleum engineering university. And they are obviously quite well sought after here from the oil industry. You have scientists here in the medical center, several Austrians. You have people in research here. We have in Dallas is a big medical incubator managed by an Austrian. And then obviously we have on the cultural side, we had for a long time Hans Graf here from Salzburg. He was the music director. Andres Orozco Estrade, the present music director of the symphony. He's not Austrian, he's from Medellin in Colombia, but he studied in Vienna, he lives in Vienna, his wife is from there. Or whoever goes to the opera, Patrick Summers, give you Austria as seen as, especially on the music side, still one of the world powerhouses. Patrick Summers, for instance, was directing the Fledermaus at one of the world super summer opera festivals in Bregenz. And then you have one of the other exhibition here, a few years ago, the Albertina, which is the largest graphic collection in the world. They had in the Museum of Fine Arts a nice presentation. You see smaller Austrian artists here and there having presentations, being on music or being it paintings, etc. And I'm not sure who remember, it's now 5 years, something ago, we had a very, very great exhibition about the Habsburgs here, which was one of the top exhibitions Museum of Fine Art by visitors ever had. That was a really a stellar event, must say, for the Austria. And that's, again, naturally shows that's the art is clearly where Austria is more in the world as a powerhouse to offer over many other things. On the business ties, yeah, I mean, there's quite a trade between Austria and Houston. As you see, Houston is, as Austria is the 44th largest trading partner for Texas. There are a lot of ties. I see slowly more Austrian companies settling up in Texas. And I think that Austria has the same challenge, like I know from my colleagues from many countries in Europe, especially the smaller ones. Many Europeans in America, they still look on the East Coast, they look on the West Coast, maybe Chicago. They often have to, unfortunately, forget that in the center is a lot of the development happening. And then the weird claim is this, yeah, we can't be everywhere. I said, well, is there not a disadvantage that America is big and powerful? But sometimes I have to say it's a uphill battle. And when the expectations, I think, what Europeans who travel to America, again, they travel to the East-West coast, they have no idea what the center is. And many really still think in Houston, you see people in cowboy boots on horses in downtown, and they are all very positive, surprised when they visit Houston and see where we are, especially also in the what diverse city it is. No? But so, as I said, in the last years, I see more happening, more companies coming to here, setting up distribution corporations. Obviously, still a lot are related to the oil and gas industry, but some more see that as a hub for parts of the US and partly also into South America. Trade, I mean, they are typically, one is a little tidbit is interesting, and I have this little bit on the bottom here. If you are, give an example, if you compare, if you look at the American exports to Singapore, has a certain number. The biggest share by far is Boeing, because Singapore Airlines, a lot of planes. If you take that away, it's dramatically less. And similarly, it's funny, if you take the Austrian exports to America, a certain number, but a huge group is Red Bull. Everybody knows it. It's so significant that you have in Austria a lot of statistics to America or other markets, including Red Bull, bracket, excluding Red Bull. It makes a dramatic difference. So Red Bull imported, I think several hundred, so 900, nearly $1 billion of drinks. They're still made in Austria and nowhere else. And I guess some of you may like nice wine. Here in the statistics, so 17 million euro, maybe around $20 million is wine export, and it's growing last year or 2019 by nearly 16%. So the Grüner Veltliner, and my home staple wine, similar maybe to Pinot Grigio in Italy, was unknown 10 years ago. Now, I have to say, in many restaurants, you really get it. And Specs and Total Wine and all the stores have a multitude of versions of that. Austria has, I mean, very briefly going some other points here, has a very, actually quite favorable tax rate at the end for companies to set up. That's why many see it as a decent hub. If you target Central and Eastern Europe, that's still the place where Austria makes sense. Obviously, if you need Germany, Holland, France, I mean, you may go in these markets. But as a hub, Austria makes sense. After the Iron Curtain fell, a lot of companies said, I'd rather go to Budapest or Prague directly. And it made sense if you had to deal with Hungary or Czechia only, but the ones who used one of these offices or Warsaw as a central hub for several of the Eastern European countries, they realized it's more expensive there than Austria because you have less infrastructure. Infrastructure itself is bad. School system isn't that great. So many came back at the end as a centralized place for many countries and used Vienna. Similar to Germany, I think one thing you face in Austria, a very motivated workforce. Education is still well doing. So this is again, I think this is the the benefits of Austria or Europe. And I think Austria, I think it's very well explained. Often I explain it, if you take like the iPhone, you have in California sitting the designers. The whole phone is built in China or in Asia, but the machinery which makes it is many times coming from Germany or Austria. So that's sort of, I think, what I'm often also tell the Austrians, that you have to keep in mind. This is the high quality, the high value add-on. That's where we are good at. We're not good in mass production in cheap things, but this is, I think, so this California, Asia, Europe, Western Europe is quite an interesting triangle. And we must not leave that, because otherwise we're dead. Austria has good universities, but we don't have a Harvard or Yale, obviously, or Stanford, and it's nearly impossible to get there. So you have to concentrate where you're good at and nurture that. No? So that means productivity is very high in Austria. It's like in Germany, people really work. I mean, compared to America, they work way less hours. Productivity, I would say, is not different, but they go home at Friday at 12. I mean, that's a fact in the Western Europe, and they still don't live under the bridge, brutally said. So I think that's from the American side sometimes to think about what's the difference. There's on both sides good and bad, but I think the work-life balance in Europe, I agree, everyone I would say is pretty dramatic different. Not to forget that by law, entire European Union has a 5 weeks minimum vacation. I mean, when we talk here in America now about more social support, etc., the 2-week vacation, no politician ever would take in the mouth. I think he would be dead and kicked out. In Europe, it's 5 weeks mandatory minimum. Doesn't matter from the poorest country to the richest. So that, I say here are two different worlds colliding. Let me just march on. And yeah, and that's where Vienna, some of you may read, there's every year coming out this Mercer study about, for companies, when they say the expats where quality of life, again, Vienna is leading now for many years in the whole concept of safety, convenience, green part, educational quality, etc. So that's actually, Vienna does here quite shine, and most of the cities here, and there's no American city anywhere showing up in the very anywhere in the top 10 or 20. Here at that one is the New York 49. It takes long to get there. Just here is some headlines. Party structures. That's again the big difference I see, obviously, between entire Europe and America. Everywhere in Europe have many parties. In Austria, 5 parties in the parliament. That means parties are pretty guaranteed forced to form coalitions to get a government going, which I see as a certain advantage, because you have at the moment in Austria have the Conservative Party is sort of a center-right, and the Green Party are together. The first time they have to find the compromises to balance this out, and it's stressful. But I think it allows a party much more focusing on their interests or support their interests and find the compromises. The US system with two parties who itself have then this widespread, I think looks to me often more and more difficult to come to a conclusion. The other, I think one of the big success stories of Austria, especially after the war, was the so-called social partnership. The government, the political parties, the unions, and the industry representatives, they all work together. And so for the longest time, like even Germany, Austria had minimum strikes. There were no interruption, different to Italy, maybe, or France and other countries. There was super peace in society, and they all were pulling on the same string. Over the last years, where your social standards got much better, the unions got a lot more of what they were fighting for years. So that got more interrupted, I would say. It was interesting to see in the first part of the coronavirus drama a year ago, they came together again. They said, we have to tackle that together. After a year, you see more strains, parties especially fighting more on their positions, but it's quite, I think this was one of the methods or underlying concepts why Austria really could excel in growing and improving as a country and as a nation. A little different tidbit, there is obviously Austria has a not so happy past with the Second World War and the Nazi times, and there's a lot of things to Austria was rather late, for instance, compared to Bernd's home country, Germany, in admitting the wrongdoing. And only last year, or 19 now with the corona, I often forget how long it is, we started to have a law that even not only if you are a victim of, like say, the Nazi times, you were in a concentration camp or you had to leave, you were entitled to get back Austrian citizenship. They extended it now to the children and grandchildren. And that was, and this is quite interesting to see that Texas is next to New York, the two highest places in America where these applications come. And a little bit to my surprise, initially, this is handled by the Austrian government super informal. Within weeks, you can have that if you prove very little, because I said, well, many had to flee with no documents, they had no birth certificate, no passports, nothing. And the Austrian, and I said, well, in a bureaucracy of a government, that's a real problem, which I see many other times when some people have some questions. But on the descendants of Nazi or this whole regime victims, the government is absolutely stunningly relaxed, call it. You have to have certain, even verbal, say, I was there, I did this and this, and I say, go for it. And so there are, you see, it's in German here. So at the moment, nearly and this is a few weeks old, 900 people in America applied. Texas were 108. 280 submitted an application, 16 from Texas, and 54 already got Austrian citizenship. And this is still the beginning, that was beginning of or middle of 2020. So it's really not that long that came into. So simply said, again, if you have anyone knowing who might fall into this, please, happy to talk to them and guide them to the right people at the embassy. Well, to the end, a little tidbit what Bernd also sought to suggest. Austria and Germany, is a little bit maybe like England and America, two countries divided by one language, and it works the same. And Germany is big. I mean, Germany goes from Bavaria to Hamburg, and I think the southern part of Germany, Bavaria, not to forget the Austrian language, in sort of linguistic technicalities, they call it sort of Bavarian dialect version, not an Austrian. There's more commonality with Munich, and Vienna has about maybe the same rivalry. It's the same distance as well between Houston and Dallas. And the food is more similar. If you go to Frankfurt or to Hamburg, I must say this is quite a different culture in a way, different attitude towards life. So that's why please don't throw us all in one pot. Come and look at the many differences. I think one where Austria benefits at the end from the history of the monarchy is, for instance, in the food. If you go to Austria to eat, you will find a lot of different type of food because all the monarchy brought it from Italy, the Wiener Schnitzel, you may know, the escalope Milanese actually came hundreds of years from Milan, so that's your famous Wiener Schnitzel. You have all the sweets from Bohemia, but you get the same time, you get Serbian cevapcici, so like kebab type of food, which came from the former Yugoslavian part, Serbia, Croatia. You get Eastern Europe far from Turkey. So whatever, often countries say this is my specialty, a variation you may very well get in a Viennese restaurant. In the Alps, it's a little bit more like Bavaria, a little more less so maybe spread out. Dumplings and meat, obviously we're a big pork country. So, but again, I think food-wise, Austria has quite a bit to offer, and over the last years, the chefs started to refine it a little bit more, make it maybe a little less heavy. And I think food is an important part. Like in Europe, if you go to many places in Austria in summer, everybody has a garden outside. Nobody will sit inside. This is one of the maybe total contrary to Texas. It's a perfect day outside. Most of my American friends still want to sit inside in the air condition. In Austria, if you have a restaurant has no garden and terrace outside, they make no business. On a day like today, nobody will sit inside. So taking the time, relaxing, I think that's again one of the lifestyle differences between the two areas. And then obviously Austria has a lot of history, is a big tourism destination place. It's a great, many times when people ask me what to do, I mean, it's a good hub. It's in the center. As I said, you stay in Vienna, you can do it. If you're in short time, you do a day trip to Budapest. I did this last time I was in Vienna with our daughter. We met up there. She lives in Europe. We took the 9 o'clock train from Vienna, 11 o'clock. I was in Budapest in the center. We had the whole day there. We had dinner at 10 o'clock. I took the last train back. At midnight, I was in Vienna. Took the cab. 20 minutes later, I was in my bed. So that's easy to do. Same thing is with going to Prague. Is a little longer, not a day trip, but it's in 4 hours you're in Prague. From Vienna in 6 hours you're in Venice. So you can use it as a hub. In general, I think in Europe, I recommend of people rather take a car, because you drive and there's everywhere something to see. You're not driving boring for 5 hours with nothing. I mean, every 20 kilometers, 20 miles, is a sight to see. So car travel, I think, in Europe is beneficial to get around. Obviously, for longer distance, you can also take the trains. More and more popular becoming night trains. You get in, again, say in Vienna in the evening into the train. In the morning at 8 o'clock, you get out of the train, had a good night rest. In Venice, that's really growing. So that's another option for how to explore Europe. And yeah, whatever, here I'm at the end, whatever you need, if you want, from fun to business, please, happy to talk to you, meet to you on the phone, whatever you want, and be your resource for it. With that, thanks for the time, and congratulations to obviously a very neat group you have here together.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and I know that everyone enjoyed those remarks. Does anybody have a quick question?
I don't have a question, Bill, but I would like to just give a quick testimonial. I've had the pleasure of visiting Austria a number of times: Salzburg, Innsbruck, Obersalzberg. It is absolutely a picture postcard everywhere you go in the country. We actually stayed a number of times in Garmisch, which is in Germany, but a stone's throw from Austria, right around the mountain. So if you ever get an opportunity to go to Austria, take full advantage of it. It is a memorable experience, and one that my wife and I love. In fact, we want to open a coffee shop in Innsbruck. There is not a coffee shop there that you can just walk up like a Starbucks. So we thought, man, we'll make a fortune here in the city center of Innsbruck.
Well, okay. Well, when you open it,
You'll have to come have I'll give you a free cup of coffee, Bill.
Well, I think the whole club needs, but okay.
Don't forget about the wonderful skiing. I learned how to ski when I was 16 in Lech.
That is beautiful.
Oh,
It
really
was
nice.
just gorgeous. And
Wow.
we have great friends in Graz, not the former California governor, but other friends in Graz.
And that's, of course, where much of Sound of Music was filmed there as well.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for Bernd. You did a superb job in securing our speaker for today, and so thank you very much for
Good
that.
man. Good man.
and